Hi, everyone. My name is Donato Cabrera, and this is Music Wise. Welcome to this week's show, our conversation, weekly conversations with folks who are in the world of arts and culture. And I've always felt, and I know that my two guests will agree, that arts, culture, and food, it all is the same thing. We're all in this together, and the art that's made in the kitchen is, in my opinion, just as important and as creative and as beautiful of the art that's made on the stage. So, without further ado, let's welcome James Trees and Giovanni Mauro.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey guys.
Hi, gents. Thanks for having us.
I'm so happy that you guys are both available. I know that, typically this would be sort of right in the middle of lunch service. So you both are, for one reason or another, not in the kitchen, which is
it's odd, this COVID thing is one of the fringe benefits of the whole pandemic, is we get a little time now and then.
I mean, I don't know how
you're a mover and shaker. It's much different than me. I'm just trying to,
James, we were talking a little bit before we started the broadcast that while we were seemingly, all of us now, me not being able to perform and you not being necessarily having the ability to serve and have the restaurants open, we were all busy. And why don't we both talk a little bit about what still needed to be done on a daily basis for your restaurants?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we closed down in the middle of the week, obviously with no notice, and that was kind of cool because we had enough food for the weekend, so that was great. So the first thing we did is we started cooking family meal because we didn't have any answers. We didn't know how long this thing was going to be. We didn't know anything, so we just started cooking for our restaurant family, giving them groceries, making them bread, taking everything home, and just basically emptying out the restaurant. Then we were looking at like what this timeline looked like. And since it was so open-ended, we decided to redo our bathrooms. And because we're 7 days a week, 2 services a day, there was no time to ever, we hope, knock on wood, we'll never get another chance to do that. So we also redid the back bar and redid the bar flooring, because there were certain elements when I opened that I just didn't have enough money to put anything into them. So we kind of it was a patch job. You guys both know the restaurants, the bathrooms at Esther's looked like fast food bathrooms. And we were like, that's not who we are. That's not the stage that we're setting. That's not what we want to show people. And so we took the time and the money and put it into that right there. And then because we do 14 services a week, we have 6 or 7 managers on salary. And we just started, cleaning, organizing, redoing all the things we wanted to do. And, I kept them on payroll the whole time. And just, it's something I'm really, really proud of, that we were able to take care of people because they're family. And it really solidified us as a group and, like a band, we're a band, we're a band of pirates, but we're a band, it was a great time. And then we started doing the cooking kits and fed a bunch of our regulars, and a lot of people who had never been to the restaurant got to try those. And it was a really good time for our restaurant as a whole. It was great.
What about you, Gio? What was your? Go ahead.
The similarities are so amazing, and it's sometimes like a broken record in restaurants. It's like once opening day comes, you never feel like you have enough to get everything done. And all you're thinking about is just patch it up so we can get open quick. Just whatever it takes. Just let's go. Let's get it open. It's done. It's showtime. It's showtime. I mean, talk about, the baton coming down, right? That kind of feeling. And I took, besides the mother dough and having a great worry after 20 years of, keeping that alive and baking on a daily basis. And I noticed that there was a bread shortage. And so besides that angle of the restaurant, we were closed for all intents and purposes. And so this gave me a chance for the sit-down restaurant to say, just like James, just like you did, is let's we have the opportunity to do all the projects that we could never do. Let's do them now. Let's take advantage of this chance, and let's keep busy. And we did a lot of the same things. My office has been underneath our staircase, where I literally have to go in backwards to fit. And
You're the Harry Potter of chefs, Gio.
What's that?
You're the Harry Potter of chefs.
I'm telling you. And so finally, I think we're finally finishing my office, so I could actually have an office, and that could have never happened had we stayed open like we have. So I think this is part of an entrepreneurial spirit, is that we always look for, okay, let's look at the positive, because what else are we going to do? And we've been so incredibly blessed to have resources and people. The community has been unbelievably supportive, like at a level that I never would have thought possible. Vegas is just unreal. Like, friends came out of everywhere to support every way they could. I'm just floored by this experience. I think it's unified us at a level that it would have taken us decades to get to this kind of unity on an organic level. And this event, and it's made a lot of bad impact on people's financial lives, my own included, as far as the sit-down restaurant, Monzú. But there's been a lot of good that has come out of it, and that's my experience.
Well, I just have to add to that looking to both of you, the classical music world can often be sort of set in their ways. We sort of do the overture, concerto, symphony, and that's
tradition.
and it's a little bit of tradition involved, but it has been so inspiring to me and to the Las Vegas Philharmonic to see what both of you were able to do right away. And this very show that I'm doing now once a week is an outgrowth of wanting to stay connected for our community. And I also am writing a blog every day about music, and there's so many other things that the Las Vegas Philharmonic is to our community other than just that Saturday night at the Smith Center. And we're now being in some ways forced, but it's been a wonderful adding that entrepreneurial spirit of what else can we do? We can do so many other things like what you guys have experienced. I wanted to talk a little bit about both of your background with regard to music, because it is a very special and unique history that both of you have. James, when I first met you, one of the first things you told me was that your dad was a musician, and I remember when you first opened, you had a wonderful connection to the Las Vegas Philharmonic. You wanted to be connected to the Smith Center, to what we were doing, and I found out why. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I think the outreach that the Philharmonic does is amazing. We definitely wanted to be a part of, when you set a symphony, when you set the Phil and how you're going to do your show, that's someone's entire night. And we think that dinner before a show is so important. And we wanted to set the tone for that. Like, we wanted to be a part of that experience. Because when people say, I went to the Smith Center and I saw the show, the first question people are going to ask are, what'd they play? The second question is, where'd you eat? Right? And so before, I don't really think there was a restaurant that really wanted to cater to that clientele. And we want to make sure that the people of Las Vegas know that we are there to be a part of their show experience, to be a part of that neighborhood and community experience, which is really what the Phil is such a link, and what the Smith Center is such a link to for so many people in Las Vegas. And coming into it, my dad is a honky tonk guy. He has been a musician. He was a cowboy and then a musician from the 70s, basically 60s, 70s and on. And he used to play all the honky tonks around the city. He had a standing gig at the Silver Dollar. He played Nevada Palace. He played, the Stardust. He played all the rooms. And I remember going to the Mint and watching him play a set, and then him taking us for mint chocolate chip ice cream. That's like a very early food memory that I have that was just stayed with me about how those two things are just so connected. And now it's so weird because my dad actually writes songs with Larry from the Rhyolite Sound, who's at Makeshift Union. Big shout out to our neighbors. And he runs the shop there, and he's a country songwriter. And my dad and him sit out on the back porch, and they hammer away on new songs for the Rhyolite. And I love watching that connection that they have, and being right next to them is such an amazing thing for me. It's like it just makes Esther's have a sense of place just beyond being a restaurant. It's part of a neighborhood. It's part of a generation. It's part of something that just goes beyond the four walls of a restaurant.
That's a great story. And there is that, and it's wonderful that Esther's is in that downtown area within proximity to the Smith Center to sort of have that direct relationship, but also more the philosophical relationship is what you're talking about, that connection. Gio, I'll never forget the first night I met you. We met each other at your mother's restaurant.
Yeah.
And we met through a friend who is an opera singer.
Yeah.
While we were, and this is the exact thing what I'm talking, we met at having dinner. We started talking about music while eating.
Right.
And, to say that there was an immediate connection between you and your lovely wife, Naomi, and myself is an understatement because of the connection to both food and music. Can you talk a little bit about you've had a really interesting journey with music, and it's still also a major part of your life.
Yeah. So I'm very transparent. So I'll give you, as short as I can, a little bit of personal background. My relationship with music is bittersweet. And here's what I mean by that. It was my absolute first love. And when I was 16, I decided that I wanted to be an opera singer. I was going to be on major stages and singing medium-sized roles because that's where the voice was. And I pursued that with everything I had. Voice teachers and, studying in Italy with some great names and studying here in the States with great names, and really came across some amazing, amazing professionals. And I had one mentor. Her name is Dolores Zajic. She's probably still the best Verdian mezzo-soprano in the world. And
from Nevada.
From Nevada. She lives up in Reno. And she heard my voice and she said, there's something there, and I think you could do something. But what I'm worried about is that you're now 28. I saw her at 28. And she said, if you're not established by 24, you're going to have a really hard time. And I would hate to see you chase a dream into your 40s and 50s like I've seen so many people do, when something's, where it's very difficult to make happen as you grow older as a singer, as an operatic singer. So she said, and I'm not telling you can't do it. I'm not saying that there's no possibility. But what I'm asking you to do is set yourself a limit. How hard and how long are you going to pursue this as hard as humanly possible? And that time for me was 32 years old. And I said, okay, I'll do this for another 32. I'll hang up my hat.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said that's a wrap.
And so, yeah, but I had been pursuing it for a while, since I was 16, right? So, add it together, but I just didn't want to, there's always that worry that you're chasing something that's never going to happen. I wanted to have some sort of living. I wanted to have a family. I needed to provide at some point for myself and my family. So 32 was that age. And I decided to go and I had been put in contact by the great maestro Pavarotti with a gentleman named Carlo Bergonzi, who was the absolute leading authority on singing Verdi as a tenor. I mean, there was no one better. Everybody went to him for coaching. He was just a master. And I studied with him outside of Parma for 2 years. Now, of course, I picked up just as much culinary skills while I was there as I did as I did singing. But at 32, I hung it up. And so I did it for practical reasons, but there's this huge void in my soul because it is a love that I have for lyric opera. It's just part of my being, as is food. So what I've done is I've channeled all the energy and all the love and all the passion that I've had for music, and I've put it into food. And I'm so some people accuse me of caring too much, and it's because it's so personal to me. I don't know how else to do it. I really don't. I wish I could switch off the sensitivity in my brain about my food and my cooking and the experience I provide, but I simply can't. And so it is an intrinsic part of my being, food and music. And this is speaking to your point. So honored that I could voice this on this platform, that I could voice this passion of mine and this love affair that I have for both. And really it's, the cool thing about food is the only art form, I think, food and beverage, that you have to experience live. You can't can it. You still have to eat, right? You can think you can smell it. You can think you can taste it, but until you cook it and actually put it in your mouth, it doesn't come alive. So you have to experience live. With music, you can, record it. You can see it. It's not the same. Live is always better, right?
That's right.
But you are not forced to see it live. You have some sort of voyeuristic kind of opportunity. But with food and beverage, it's got to be live. It has to be live. There's no other way to do it.
James, speaking of that live experience, you mentioned that the set was such a great image, and I hadn't thought about this before. That when you go into a restaurant, it's like a stage, and that's so important. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that, especially with now, and also just to reiterate, Giovanni, you have two restaurants. You have a pizza, Old School Pizzeria, wow. And you have, of course, your wonderful pizzeria Monzú, and James, you have Esther's Kitchen and Ada's soon to be something. And let's talk a little bit about that set that you're talking about.
So I mean, like, everything has a feeling to it. The way music is played, the way, the way cooking happens, the way the orchestra is conducted. And it is in that expo mode where you can add tempo, you can slow things down, you can control every person's experience to a point in a way that can move somebody or can infuriate somebody or can make two people fall in love. Like, you can do that with a setting, and you do that with the tempo and the thought process and the lighting and the music and the sound. Like, when people come to Esther's, it is a set. Like, we have different points at which you're going to look at different parts of the restaurant during your meal. You're going to hear different things. You're going to see different things. You're going to smell different things. And everything counts. And I think every experience and every part of that restaurant is an experience for someone at some time. And people love the thought process that goes into that. Like right now, we're building a set. Like, we're taking the Brio space at the Tivoli, and we're building a new stage. We're building a new, a new menu, which is a new, list of songs that we're going to be playing. We're going to be giving people options and giving them different feelings that they've had. So, we look at this as being an entire immersive experience, an experiential dining thing, if you will. But music goes into that, light goes into that, food goes into that. I mean, like, like the thing that me and Gio, like, you can't turn it off. Like, it's always happening. Always, your brain is always moving. I'm looking at, 5 and 6 and 7 different angles of the same experience. And food is one of them. And I've had a passion for food since I was like 15 years old, and I've just fallen in love with it, and nothing else I'd rather do. But now I feel like I'm at the conductor's point. Like, I'm making sure that my violinists can, become soloists, can become conductors, can grow, and we can build, and they can learn. And, like, I think you're just as good as like your last person that you produce that goes out and has that resume. And it is a growth process and a thought process about everything. And music is the same way. Like, I mean, you don't start off conducting the orchestra. You have to go to Parma and learn how to sing Verdi. You have to, right? Or
learn how to make torta frita. One of the two.
Well, you have to go in there and you have to throw everything at it. I mean, like, you were talking about how you cut yourself off at 32 and you gave yourself a timeline. I see this all the time with people who are getting into cooking later in life. I'm like, you'll never be great. You won't ever be able to do it. And the answer is because you didn't start when you were 15. You didn't get in early. So that 21-year-old that's next to you that you think is an idiot has 5 years of experience that you don't have. And it's just growing into greatness and having providence and doing all those things that make all the other things that we do possible. Food's just one of them.
Yeah. And to add to that, not only the sets and all the props and all the sounds and all the smells, right, and how everything's laid out. And man, you do one little mistake and you notice that one table has this eyesight of something unsightly and you didn't think about it, right? How many times have we done that where you just want to tear your hair out?
Yeah.
But then you get to add characters in your restaurant.
Yeah.
So you decide who your front door person is going to be, and they're actually a character in the set, on stage. They have a certain persona, a certain feel. Bartenders, the same thing. Mixologists, if you will. Every person has their own role, and this is the way, at least for me, this is the way that I've been able to kind of organize it in my brain to make it work. And just to your point, I wanted to add the character list that we have to, there's wonderful people who are great servers but can't be at the front door.
Absolutely.
Vice versa.
Right.
Gio, when we first met, like I said, we met at your mother's restaurant, your family's restaurant, Nora's. But that was before Pizzeria Monzú was open.
Right.
And talk a little bit about, and of course, James, you're in this right now and building your new restaurant. But what I so appreciated was when I first went in, I was there opening day, Pizzeria Monzú, that you showed me the oven that you were so proud of painting and the story of badgering the guy to finish it and get it shipped to you and the whole nine. And it's
Bertha.
That Bertha, that's right. But
I can tell you the Bertha story if you like, James. I'm sure you would love to hear it.
Yeah.
I paid for it in April, and it was June, and I still didn't have it.
Oh God!
And I was tearing my hair out, wondering when it was going to get here, right? And I thought I had lost. It was, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that I thought I had just wasted away.
The Bertha ovens come from New Zealand,
England.
England, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And so luckily, I had a friend in London that went and paid him a visit. I know this sounds very Sicilian. I don't want it to sound that way, but the oven showed up air freight on Virgin Atlantic the next week. I don't know how much it paid to ship it, but
you have a friend.
Hey, he made
more friend. I had to have that oven.
So what I would like to reiterate to the folks who are watching that when you're beginning a new restaurant, it's not just about creating the menu. It's about building that set and just looking at the bar. I would be sitting at your bar, Gio, and you telling me the story of you and your crew who became your staff, you
Right.
built that. You built it.
We did. And the reason was because I'm a stubborn mule, basically. Because so talk about intrinsic, right? My first, and how you talked about starting my first job in the restaurant was making pizzas at 14 and a half. I wasn't even legal to work yet, right? So and then my parents moved here and we opened up Nora's, and was such a part of our family. That spot where Monzú is was such a part of our family. Think about, I mean, all of my kids, their first communions, their baptisms, all the birthdays, all the anniversaries. Me and my brothers met all of our wives there, right? I mean, this was such a, so we went in and they built this beautiful, gorgeous building, and they said, okay, we're done renting, yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, what are you going to do with the old space? And they said, well, we have no plans for it. I said, well, how about I take it and I'll do something with it? And they said, you're going to be 900 yards away. I said, I know, but it's in the family. It'll all work out. And so I took it over, and I honestly thought we were just going to do a paint job and make it all. And when we got in there after 30 years of use, I realized that the place was so outdated. The plumbing and everything was so outdated. I said, there is no way that we're going to be able to open. We got to redo this whole thing. And so we started redoing all this whole thing. And once we started, there was nothing else to do but to get in there and finish it, or else we would have lost everything. And that's how it came about. I mean, when I say I built it, I don't mean that we had a contractor obviously there, but I was the laborer. We were in there with, dig out machinery to take out all the plumbing and put it all back in. And I mean, for everything, digging out foundation for that mezzanine that I want to do, because I had this wild idea. Little did I know what permitting was like and how much engineering there had to be done. Well, I have no clue. What do I know? I'm a Sicilian opera singer making pizzas. What do I know about construction, gentlemen? I just
honestly, like, the building trades are a whole different thing. Like, you want to do 5 hours on, like, I mean, like, it's like Dante's Inferno when you go down to permitting. It really is. It's like, what level of hell do I have to go to really find what thing I've committed to get through this? Like, people don't understand what that's like. Like, you're like, all I want to do is make pizza.
Right. I mean, seriously.
That should be a class.
They took pity on me because I didn't have any professional with me. I just went in with just this, look, I understand I'm an idiot. Please help me through this thing. Yeah. And I would say 9 out of 10 people took major pity on me and helped me through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the city people are really there for. Yeah. And let me tell you, like, I'm also going through that as well. I mean, I want to open a pastaio. Like, I want to, like, next to Esther's. And I will tell you, like, they don't have a permit for a pasta shop. So guess what? You can't do a pasta shop. And I'm just like, trying to tell them, like, no, like, you need a hood, you need to cook, you need to do this. I'm like, no, all I want to do is take flour and water and make it into things and then sell it. And they're like, oh yeah, you can't do that. It's just fucking, it's like you see these people over here with, like, these insane orchestras and all this thing is, you're like, I always want to be a busker. I want to grab a guitar and go outside and play. They're like, oh yeah, you can't do that. It's what it's like. It's insane.
James, you mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned this, you touched upon this subject a little bit just a few minutes ago, and you described it in detail to me the last time we saw each other at Esther's, in that you have taken it upon yourself to create this system by which the line chef is switches positions, switches roles, and learns how to bake bread, and the person who's baking bread goes over to the line. And you've done this throughout the restaurant. Talk a little bit more about that in detail and what that creates.
Well, I think it's a couple of different things that creates. Number one is it creates retention. If you can keep teaching somebody something that they don't know, they don't have to go somewhere else to learn that. Like I don't have to send my guy to Parma to, learn how to make, tortadella nonna and all these different things, because I have a person who's been there who can teach that to a cook, and we can like keep that body that's trained and keep them motivated and keep them growing. And like what we're doing with our sous chefs right now is we basically are rotating them through different parts of the restaurant, because once they have the base and the understanding of what it is that we do, that we want them to learn how to make the bread. We want them to learn how to make the pastas. We want them to learn how to make the desserts. We want them to learn how to make the pizza dough. I know so many people who think like, oh yeah, what do? I make pizza. I'm like, cool, make some dough. And they're like, I don't know how to make dough. I know how to make pizzas. I'm like, well, you don't know how to make pizza. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the best pasta cook in the restaurant. I'm like, cool, go make the pasta. Show me a pasta. And they're like, they grab yours. I'm like, no, go make a pasta. And they're like, oh, I don't know that. I'm like, well, you don't know how to cook pasta. If you don't know how to make pasta, you don't know how to cook pasta. And it's the same thing, bartenders, like servers, every single different position inside the restaurant. Everyone thinks they know something until they realize the years in depth it takes to really master that craft. I mean, like, the joke is that my dad can play anything with strings, but he can all and when he says that, like, yeah, he can play guitar, he can play bass, he can play upright bass, he can play banjo, he can play mandolin. If you give him something with strings, he understands it at a level that he can play. I think that's the same thing with cooks and with chefs. Like so many chefs today want to run around and throw on the stupid white jacket, and they want to call themselves a chef. They don't know how to make anything. They know how to open bags and order from Cisco. That's not a chef. You don't have the craft. You don't have the providence. And that's what we were talking about. It's really about getting our people inside the restaurant to, once they leave us, they're a complete person. They've worked every single station. They know every single recipe. They understand bread formulas. They understand pizza formulas. They can change their sourdough starter for the summer, which obviously I know Gio is going to have a wonderful time doing when he gets back from Scottsdale, because he just got 10 degrees hotter. and I mean, that's something that like for us is really easy, but if you gave that to someone without a full understanding of it, they're going to botch it. You're going to lose your 20-year-old starter, and you're going to have to
bought something like that, it's irreversible.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is like you have to be able to train in full understanding, full knowledge, mastery of craft. And I think, Donato, like the people who work under you, they're there to master their craft. And that's the reason why they're there. They're not there because they want a paycheck. They're there because they want to work for the master. They want to learn what you have to teach them. You're the conductor. Like the same way that I run my restaurant, the same way Gio runs his restaurant, we're conductors. That's what we do.
That's right. Gio, speaking. Well, first of all, I would like to just reiterate. Gio was actually, you were at the final week of rehearsals before we all shut down. You were there for a rehearsal of Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Yeah,
and that was a particularly interesting process because I wasn't conducting that, but I was still in the hall doing the role of a conductor per se. I was helping with the rehearsal process and balances and so forth. And I just remember thinking, you brought your son and your nephew, I believe.
Yeah, nephew, yeah.
And just can you talk a little bit about how music is still a very much part of Pizzeria Monzú, because there's still live music there. It's really part of the DNA of the restaurant.
Right, and this is This is the struggle that's happening economically right now. I think there's a great divide between food being seen as a product and food being an experience. I am doubling down on doing the experience. I don't know if it's smart, dumb, or it doesn't matter. I really am not that smart to figure it out. But I do know that if I put my heart into something, that it usually works out better. And so that's why I'm doing it, because to me, restaurants are about the experience. And the experience is also music. And I love having live entertainment. And on a financial point, and I haven't met a single person that disagrees with me. I'm a financial point, live music in restaurants make 0 cents.
Yes.
They bring in some business that sit down for 3.5 hours and tables don't turn, and it just doesn't make sense. And you know, these and to say musicians, you pay them the best you can. They're still extremely underpaid, so they're almost doing you a favor, you know, by playing in your restaurant, and yet, you know, you have to squeeze that money out, because contrary to popular belief, restaurants aren't a money machine. It's actually quite difficult to make money in them. You have to be really, really careful. And so what, you know, but that's my commitment to. That's what gives me the will to get up and do it another day, take another beat, take another Yelp beating, take another public humiliation.
Don't you have 5 stars on
shame every day. That's what makes me get up, is that put my heart into it and go do it. So you talk about the connection of music. That's why I do it, because it's part of the experience and the liveliness. And here's the thing about food. I believe that food and how well I cook is a representation of the respect I have for the relationships dining at the table. And the more detail you put into it, the more care, the more skill you put into it, the greater your respect for the relationship that happens at the table. Food is a vehicle for relationships, as music is a vehicle for relationships, because you strike at people's basic, you know, sensories, and it makes people feel alive, and it gives them an opportunity to connect with other human beings. That is the restaurant business to me. To go into a model, you know, this is why I started this train of thought, to go into a model where food becomes just a product, then it takes away all of that experience base. And I don't know if we're going to be forced to go there or not, but I would hate to see our industry lose that part of it, because it's not just about food.
I think the difference is
it's not just about food.
Gio, we're not willing to do that. I think the difference is you and I are not willing to live in that world. We've chosen to not do that on purpose. Like, my restaurant makes very, very small percentages of profit, and we're busy all the time. But, like, you know where that money goes. It goes into the love of the craft. It goes into taking care of people. It goes into paying living wages. It really does do that. And, you know, that's what makes it successful. It's not the dollars in the bank. It's that you can hold your head up high wherever you go and know that you believe in what you do, right? I mean, like, people.
And that one kid that comes back and says, "Chef, everything I am today is because of when I worked for you when I was 14. I know that that's happened to you several times."
Yeah. I mean,
gosh almighty, that is just such satisfaction.
Absolutely. That's the reason why you do it, because you can ignite passion in somebody. And that's like what music does. Like, I go back all the way to like my 3rd grade music teacher, Mr. Delelis. Like, he was the reason why I fell in love with music. It wasn't my dad. He's the one who made it like, wow, music is amazing, and music is part of life, and music is part of your soul. And that's like, you know, he connected what it was that my dad was doing to my life. Right. And I think that's one of the things we have the ability to do as chefs, is we connect the passion that people feel inside themselves and allow them to start that growth process. It's like lighting a wildfire. And I'm sure you see that with musicians all the time.
Most definitely. And certainly it is heartwarming when I used to be a music director of a youth orchestra. And now 10 years later, I'm seeing some of them becoming quite well-known soloists or members of professional orchestras, and for have them get in touch with me and say, you know, still to this day, the musical highlight was playing on this tour somewhere in Europe with you, etc. So it is heartwarming. Gio mentioned his background. You know, he grew up in the restaurant world and surrounded by food. What was your connection? How did you get connected to food, James?
Well, I mean, really, it's kind of a jokey story. I chased a girl into a class and ended up signing up for culinary classes, and then she didn't show up, and I fell in love with food.
It's always a girl.
Hey, like we always know, like we've read the books, we've heard the music. It's always a girl.
That's awesome.
And thank God she didn't show up, because then I might not have been able to focus on the things that ended up making me fall in love with food. And in reality, it was either her or food. It looks like food won, so it worked out. But I mean, that's where it comes from. That and I grew up. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a honky tonk singer. So obviously they were never around. My mom was going to school. My dad was working. So I ate a lot of dinner down the street with my best friend Alfio and his family, the Arenzes. And, his dad jumped off a cruise ship 40 years ago coming out of Melfi and ended up in New York. And he cooks very simple cucina pavara, which is like the food of the poor in Italy. So I grew up eating pasta piselli and pasta cicchetti and braciole and all these like very, very simple things. And I fell in love with the simplicity of food and how it can make you feel and how that brought people together, even in, the east side of Vegas. And, and then I went and worked for great chefs. And, and then I just learned that food is like such an interesting mesh of science and history and art, and those are the things that make me, fulfilled and come alive, and they fill your soul. And I think music is the same way. So the story of a chef is no different than the story of a singer. Just ended up, I can't play the guitar even though I own one. I don't have the skills that my dad has. I can't sing at all, but you know what? But I love music, and it's something that flows through me because I understand the craftsmanship and art and dedication and failure it takes every day to be great at something.
Great. That's a great story. Gio, was it always music for you, or was there something else? Did you feel this pull? Because, for me, I was attracted. I could have very well just as easily been attracted to becoming a chef or gotten into the restaurant business. It turns out that throughout my whole life, I have had friends in the restaurant business. There's just something about it that attracts. I like hanging out with you. I like having the conversations about food and art.
I'm not sure what that says about you, incidentally, that you like us crazy cook people.
But what was it about music was my grandmother. She was not a professional pianist, but she played the piano, and what she could do at the end of the night after a holiday meal, my Mexican grandmother, she could play the piano and she could bring the whole family together and just listen around in the living room. And it wasn't like a recital. It wasn't anything fancy, but the idea that it brought people together was such an incredible, it was magic to me. Like, how does this happen? I want to do that. Gio, was there a social aspect about it to you? Food, connected to music?
Growing up, always, and for me, it's always been both. Mm-hmm. They've been just intrinsically combined, and music has always been. I mean, I think of my childhood, the years I spent in Italy as a boy. I don't know whether I've said this or not, but I was born in Los Angeles. When I was 5, my family moved to Sicily. I came back at 13, and then I went and studied in my early mid-20s out there. So,
Gio, I think you told me that. Gio, just quickly, I think you remember. Yeah. I remember you telling me that when you came back to the United States at 13. English was something that, you had to take some time to be comfortable with again, right?
I had forgotten all of my English, all of it. And, I often, I sympathize so much with people. I relate so much with people that come to our country and have a language barrier and a tough time learning the language, because I remember those struggles. I remember seeing kids talking about me in derogatory sense, I'm sure, and not understanding what the heck they were saying about me. It was pretty messed up situation for a kid to go through, and people go through it as kids and as grown-ups. So yeah, the back and forth was an interesting. It shaped me a lot, and it made me kind of feel like the sense of I have a foot here and a foot there, and I don't really belong in one and not and the other. And I a lot of people comment on how well I can identify with people that are foreigners, quote unquote, that and it's because of that struggle. So yeah, but it's always been in my life part of the entertainment aspect of food. When you have people over at the end of the meal, there's always an uncle that played the fisarmonica, or an uncle that played the guitar or the mandolin, or the one uncle that used to be an aspiring opera singer, or that was always part of it. And it always culminated in music and song. And that happened here when I remember it before going over there as very young, like these very faint memories that you have when you're 5 or 6, right? And then in Sicily, that really solidified. But I mean, the love for food and music was undeniable. When I came back, okay, is when I found myself in really an identity. Okay, who am I? An American, an Italian? In Italy, I was the American. In America, I'm the Italian, and it's kind of still that way. And I've always had a issue with weight. And what made me try singing was Pavarotti. I saw him on TV, and I saw how loved he was. And I said, my goodness, there's an obese man that people absolutely love. And he's one of me. He comes from my heritage. And I identified with that so strongly and so greatly that I just tried for choir on a whim. And it turns out that I had a voice. I mean, there's just coincidences, right? And so, and I always tell people I fell in love with Italy more here as, quote unquote, an immigrant, even though I was born here, an American citizen, as an immigrant at that point. Fell in love with Italy more here because I could see it from afar than when I was there, because ultimately it was my strong head that wanted to get out of Sicily and come to America because I saw at an early age that economically it was very difficult to do anything. It was very difficult. And so yeah, that's my personal story. Transparency is one of my things. I hope that's okay. I hope I'm not saying
no, absolutely. I also, these images of what music can achieve. I remember both of my grandfathers died before I was born, and my mother's father played the trumpet. And I would always, at my grandmother's house here in Las Vegas, I lived here, I grew up here in Las Vegas too, but I remember going to my grandmother's house and opening up my grandfather's trumpet case and looking at this beautiful brass instrument. It was and I think I also remember the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and that really cool, trumpet. And when after I started playing the piano, and when I decided to join middle school for an elective, I decided to join band, and it was because of that trumpet that I chose the French horn. I wanted to play the trumpet first, but I was like, you know what? That French horn actually looks more like that picture on the Beatles album. And it's just these images and family histories that really these circles keep on being closed. James, I was thinking back to, you mentioned you had this connection to this Italian family, right? Because your parents were so busy working. And was it always a goal of yours to have a sort of an Italian cuisine as a basis for your restaurants, or was this something that you discovered over time?
I mean, so I love Italian food. I've always had a true love for it. But I've never opened an Italian restaurant until I opened Esther's. I've always worked for really, really great chefs and building a pedigree and doing super fancy food for, only like the top 1% of 1% of people. And I just had a realization when I was living in Venice that I didn't want to cook for the 1% anymore. I don't want to cook I want to be able to use the technique and use like what I've learned and put that into something with a ton of soul. And so like when people describe like what Esther's is I describe it as Italian soul food, because we're taking the idea of something that is cucina pavara and then elevating it to a level that it becomes something else. It's a jazz riff on Italian food. It's really what it is. It's just like, you have to have the training in order to do it. But people who come in and they've worked at Italian restaurants can't cook our food. They just don't know. They don't understand what it is that goes into these things, the layers and the thought process and the building blocks. I mean, like most people are like, okay, cool, we got to make polenta, and people are like, okay, where's the polenta? I'm like, the bag of non-GMO organic corn is right over there. Good luck. And it's a different, and they're like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean we're grinding, Abruzzo rye to make pasta? And I'm like, yeah, like that's where the flour comes from. That's how you get the flour. That's how you make the pasta. And everyone's like thinks it's all in bags, and people think it's, simple. And great Italian food is simple, but it comes from a tradition of hard work and thoughtfulness and using everything that's available to you. I mean, that's what I love about Italian food. That's the reason why it's so interesting. And that's the reason why you can make it your own, is because we were cooking this great seasonal Californian cuisine in LA, and because everyone was doing it, nobody cared. But then we take those products out of LA and we bring them to Las Vegas, and we're using better product than any hotel can even get their hands on, from farmers who have been making the potatoes for 20 years that they have brought in from Peru. And this is the reason why we use this potato, because the starch content and all the different things. And then we make gnocchi, and people are like, well, your gnocchi is better than everybody else's. And we're like, because we apply insane amounts of technique, something that has a ton of tradition. And that's the difference between what we do at Esther's and what most Italian restaurants do. Like, I know that it drives Gio crazy because we make this pasta, and he's like, I don't cook pasta like that. I have to use dry pasta, or I have to make this pasta. It has to be done like this way in Italy. And I'm just like, yeah, no. And he's just like, I have a love of what I do, and I love what he does, and we can stand side by side and be in love with the same food for completely different reasons. It's like loving a piece of music for two completely different reasons. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And it's something that I love that I share with Gio, is that he has such a traditional Italian base, and he has to do things in a very exacting way. And I'm kind of the other side of that, which is like, I understand the technique and I understand like the reasons why those things are done that way. And I choose not to do it that way, and it's just like,
you're not bound by the emotional confines that I am.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen the field.
It's about holding on to my emotional, and I recognize that. I say to Naomi, my wife, all the time that, perhaps if I went into a different cuisine, I'd be less rigid. And I recognize that because there's emotional block when it comes to those dishes.
Yeah.
If my grandfather or my aunt would not approve, then I can't do it. I just can't.
But I think what all of us love in going to both of your restaurants is the same obsession and exactitude to the ingredients, to where it comes from, to
that. Sorry to interrupt. That and the fact, before I forget this thought, just to your point, James, of what you were saying, is it's not simple, but it's simple, right?
Right.
I recently heard an interview by Massimo Bottura, which is, the great, right? The Pavarotti of our world, right? And he reminded me of a saying that's, I guess, on the Modena flag. It's avia per via, avia per via, make what is difficult seem simple. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about. It's such a wonderful, wonderful statement and it all starts, going back to your point, and it all goes to the ingredients, that passion for ingredients. At the end of the day, I don't know, maybe I'm not as good as other people, but if I start with a bad ingredient, I can't make it taste good.
Right.
I don't care what technique I apply to it. My dish is not going to taste good. And if I have a great ingredient, I have messed it up on many occasions. Chances are that if it's a great ingredient, at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty darn good dish.
And the thing that we realize, and you can apply this to music, is the understanding and then the simplicity, right? Like sometimes, when you see chefs who try too hard, they're messing up their ingredients. When you see a band that tries too hard, they're messing up their ingredients.
Yeah.
And if you have
get into their own head. Imagine if you were sitting there conducting, Donato, and you're thinking about sound waves and doing calculation in your head about sound waves and how it's traveling. And you've done those studies, you understand it, but that's not, at that point, you can't be thinking about that stuff. It's going to mess everything up if you get in your own head. I think but I've been guilty of that too. I think it's a process. As chefs, we grow and we get, I went through 2 years of over technical stuff where I think about it now. I'm like, wow, what the heck was I thinking? Where was I? Where was my brain to think that I could pursue it in that direction?
I'll tell you something real quick to add to that, which is super hilarious, is I'm having a conversation with one of my cooks, Julio, who wants to move to San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, I see where you are. You're a good cook. You understand the basics. You get that whole entire point of things. But then here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to San Francisco. You're going to go work at a Michelin-starred restaurant. You're going to pick up those little tweezers. And then after about 3 years, you're going to realize that it's a fucking waste of time. and I did the exact same thing. Like I learned, reverse spherification. I learned cold oil spherification. I learned how to make every foam and froth and every single thing in the world. And then at the end of the day, if you can't make chicken soup, if you can't make the basic understanding fundamental things, and what we have is we have a bunch of chefs now who can't cook, who don't understand the basics, because it's like a kid who picked up a guitar but never learned how to play any instrument,
Well, the same thing I can share with you is that there are multiple recordings of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, for instance, and yet you can put up 100 conductors in front of the same orchestra and say, be faithful to do Beethoven's Fifth exactly how it is on stage, and yet you will hear 100 different interpretations of that same symphony. Someone will be a little faster, someone will be a little slower. He or she will get a more harsh or more mellow sound from that orchestra. It could be the exact same orchestra playing the exact same music, and there will also be people who call themselves professional conductors who will not be able to conduct that symphony at all. And that orchestra will have to cover for them. And so it's the same sort of world, it's that attention to ingredients and intention to your art form that I think all three of us are obsessed with and are committed to.
And sometimes it's really important that the conductor just gets out of the way and lets musicians play.
That's right.
And when we're talking about Italian food, when we're talking about ingredients, it's about the conductor just having faith in the tomato, just having faith in the celery, having faith in the arugula, and letting that speak to whatever it is it needs to speak to. We just did a dish with porchetta di testa. I wanted to teach my new sous chef how to make porchetta di testa. And I showed him how to cut it and how to roll it and how to bring it together and how to cook it and how to pull it and how to press it and then how to slice it and then how to lay it out. And when we were talking about those little ingredients at the end, where you could take something so simple and so beautiful and ruin it. It was a dot of chili oil, a dot of saba, a tiny bit of pecorino, and a leaf of mustard greens to add spice. It wasn't a salad on top of something. It was micro touches to perfect ingredients that bring something together to make it amazing.
Yeah, agreed. And also sometimes getting out of the way of your best players too. Mm-hmm. Because I have been guilty of that, where I've had extraordinarily talented human beings and I've stubbornly gotten in their way because it had to be my way. And later, a week later, I'm like, I'm eating crow, bud. You were right. We need to do it this way. And I think that's also true. Has got to be. I'm sure you've had experiences like that, Donato, where one of your soloists is like, no, I'm doing it this way. And then later on you go, yep, that's the way it should have been done.
I vividly remember when I had the lucky break here and there and got in front of a major symphony orchestra, and I would try my best to insist that I wanted to do it a certain way, and they just look up at me and still do it the way that great orchestra always does it. And there's it's and thinking back, they were showing me a tradition that this group of people have collectively, and imparting that gift to me. And sure, you want to be headstrong, you want to do it your way, but there's
at that time you weren't feeling that, because I am the chef. Get out of my kitchen.
Gentlemen, our hour is up. This could go on for a lot longer, I know, and I'm sure it will when we're all together again in person, and when I'm enjoying another incredible meal in your restaurants. Thank you so much for this hour.
Thank you for everything. Thank you, Donato.
Thanks for letting us share.
All right.
For your vacation stuff. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
My 36-hour vacation, James.
Amazing. You deserve it every hour.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ciao.
Take care, both of you. Ciao. Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.